Before switching careers to become a product sales manager, Alex had been a lecturer in anatomy at Mountview Medical College. Alex's decision to change paths was not due to a lack of success in his field. In fact, Alex's teachings were highly acclaimed, and had he not chosen to leave, he might have already advanced to the position of associate professor by now. What compelled Alex to step away from the university lecture podium was his inherent fear and loathing of death. An indecipherable dread consumed him, akin to a moving cold needle that seemed to penetrate from the soles of his feet, propagating within his body through the bloodstream, with uncertainty of when it would strike his heart, perhaps half a year, a month, or even a minute. In the same way, Alex was unsure when this fear would return, but he felt that it was not far off, lurking somewhere, ready to seize his life at any moment. The story begins with an anatomy class 3 years ago. For the students, this was a class they would never forget in their lifetime, as it had been their first encounter with a full-body dissection. Despite Alex's emphasis on mental preparedness, the sight of the corpse had caused a few students to vomit. This event significantly affected the students' appetites, with many avoiding the cafeteria, especially meat dishes like stir-fried pig liver, in the following 3 days. The cadaver for this particular class was Jane Doe, a rarity in the realm of medical education due to the chronic insufficiency of available corpses, which are typically of the elderly who had died of disease, with most organs in a state of failure. Despite the scarcity, full-body dissections were often postponed due to local customs, where even if the deceased had wished to contribute to the advancement of medical science, the next of kin would most likely refuse out of a perceived disrespect to the dead. Nevertheless, every cadaver represented a treasured hands-on learning opportunity, with fresh and youthful ones being extremely rare. Jane Doe lay untouched on the dissection table, her face covered in a white cloth, until Alex had finished his usual introduction regarding precautions and the significance of cadaver dissections in the realm of medicine, whilst requesting the students to regard the body with high reverence. Jane Doe was an unusually young woman, perhaps only in her mid-20s. She had reportedly been a secretary who committed suicide by slitting her wrists over relationship problems. Her friend, Lisa, found a body donation form among her possessions, written during her student years. She was not a beautiful woman, and her slightly sunken eyes hinted at immense strain endured during the final period of her life, suggesting that perhaps death really was a relief for her. With his students watching intensively, Alex steeled his nerves and made a decisive downward incision with his scalpel on Jane Doe's abdomen. The scalpel moved effortlessly, as if unzipping a bag. Upon the scalpel's entry, the skin and purple muscles fell to either side due to the pressing force from within. With the use of a retractor to pull apart the skin and muscles, the organs appeared in full view. At this point, Alex had forgotten about the identity of the cadaver lying beneath him. What mattered now was how to etch the structural details of the body into his students' memories, an understanding that would be integral to their future careers in medicine. The viscera were meticulously removed and explained in detail to the students, revealing the structures within. After the dissection, Alex carefully replaced the organs back into the hollow cavity that once held them. Despite some students turning pale and most feeling nauseous, the lesson was a triumph. They had all withstood the test, and their attendance was not in vain. After the students departed, Alex was alone in the dissection room. The harsh white lights beat down on the dissection table, casting a stark glare. The campus clock struck 5 times as Alex removed the square cloth covering Jane Doe's face, and that's when the horrifying event unfolded. Suddenly, Jane Doe's eyes snapped open, glaring malevolently at Alex, nearly causing him to fall over in shock. Standing up gingerly, Alex confirmed this was not an illusion. She was staring up at the ceiling with an angry expression, not the peaceful visage she had before. But she was definitely deceased. Mustering his courage, Alex searched for a logical explanation and concluded that it might be a post-mortem biological electrical stimulus that sparked a nerve reflex. He closed her eyes, replaced the cloth, and left the dissection room. In the following days, the image of Jane Doe's eyes haunted Alex. Though not prone to believing in the supernatural, those eyes clung to him like a specter, making him wonder why they opened and what message they might convey. 3 days later, Alex learned that the corpse had been cremated, with her ashes returned to her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, in Northeastern. A year passed and Alex thought he had forgotten the incident. In that time, he met Emily on a rainy night as he returned home from a meeting at the college. With no taxis in sight, he walked alone under his umbrella until he noticed a figure trailing him. Quickening his pace, so did the figure, until Alex confronted his follower, revealing a fragile girl in a yellow raincoat. They stood face to face. "Why are you following me?" Alex asked. "I'm sorry, I was scared walking alone," she replied timidly. Exhaling in relief, Alex joked about not being a bad person. She, laughing, responded that he looked like a teacher, and teachers are seldom bad. To that, Alex offered to walk her home, and from then on, they frequently met on their commutes, growing gradually acquainted. Alex never dared to tell her about his specialty, so she remained unaware of the specifics of his work. One day, Alex disclosed to her that he was an anatomy lecturer. Rather than reacting with shock or fear as Alex had anticipated, Emily showed a keen interest and inquired if the cadavers felt the scalpel. "Of course not. Once dead, they can't feel," Alex responded. Her persistent questioning about dead bodies' sensations started to weigh on Alex, brew an ominous dread within him, even making him apprehensive to meet her despite no overt reason. Alex conjectured it might be the psychological strain from dealing with cadavers so often. The gravity of the situation dawned on him after an incidental discovery. He was waiting for Emily in her dorm room when, out of boredom, he rifled through her desk and found a yellowed paper, a donation form with his signature, from the woman he had dissected a year ago. How it ended up there was beyond him. In a panic, he opened an old copy of Mountview Weekly to find the news of a secretary who took her own life, the same woman. A chilling sensation overtook him, the room felt eerily cold and sinister. "Now, let's begin," Alex said, gesturing to his students to focus on the dissection table. Silence loomed as he picked up the scalpel, placing it at Jane Doe's throat. His plastic-gloved hand against her skin was suffocatingly white. Her body still retained some softness and elasticity, different from the cadavers he usually worked with, making him hesitate. The fleeting thought that perhaps she wasn't truly dead crossed his mind. But he quickly dismissed it as ludicrous, chalking it up to the tragedy of her untimely death causing such an illusion. At that moment, Alex heard distinct footsteps in the hallway, the sound of high heels tapping steadily toward him. Unsure of what to do, he braced himself for her appearance. The footsteps stopped abruptly at the door, and though Alex saw no one, he felt as though someone was standing right outside, watching him. His legs grew weak, but he dared not move. After a short while, the high-heeled footsteps resumed and gradually faded away until they disappeared completely. Panicked, Alex hastened back to his home to ponder for hours, trying to make sense of what had happened. Could it all be a mere coincidence? Perhaps Emily was an acquaintance, classmate, or friend of that girl. It wouldn't be strange for her to keep the volunteer form. As for the footsteps, maybe they were just echoes from downstairs. A series of plausible explanations calmed him slightly. He called Emily's cell phone, seeking some answers, but the calls went unanswered, echoing back only with a monotonous tone. The more Emily ignored his calls, the more intense Alex's fear grew. Then suddenly, footsteps sounded outside his door, identical to the ones he'd heard by Emily's place. His heart pounded, he didn't dare to open the door. Thud. 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 Someone was knocking. Emily had come to find him. After much hesitation, Alex mustered the courage to answer the door. "It's you," he said, his voice dry. "It's me," Emily replied. "I looked for you last night, and you weren't there," Alex stepped back, saying. "I went out for a bit. I saw you'd been by when I came back," she answered. "Is that right? Why have you been calling me so much?" she inquired. I was worried something had happened to you," Alex replied. Emily chuckled. "Can I stay here tonight?" Alex wanted her to leave but found it impossible to express. Throughout their acquaintance, she had never let him touch her. "I'm going to take a shower," she announced and walked towards the bathroom. "Okay," Alex stepped aside to let her pass. Sitting in the living room, listening to the water run, Alex felt uneasy. After her shower, Emily, now in her nightgown, sat across from him, both silent. "Let me give you a massage," she suggested, moving behind him to knead his shoulders. "Do you think a dissected body feels pain?" she suddenly asked again. Alex leaped up. "Who are you really?" But a sharp pain at his neck sent him into darkness. When he woke up, his head splitting, Alex found himself bound to a chair. Emily stood before him, her gaze furious, that look. It was the same one he remembered from Jane Doe. You are." Fear overwhelmed him, but his struggle was futile. Her face began to change, morphing slowly into a grotesque visage, becoming Jane Doe. "Do you think a body feels pain when dissected?" she demanded fiercely. "Maybe it does." Alex stammered. Slowly, she undid her nightgown, revealing an empty, red cavity. "You say, does it hurt?" she snapped. "But you volunteered," Alex protested. "I regretted it. I was leaving this filthy world, and you pulled me back. I want you to stay with me forever," she claimed. "What do you want to do?" Alex asked in terror. She gave a stiff smile, drew a shiny scalpel from her pocket, twirled it before his throat. "I want you to feel the pain of being dissected," she said coldly. "No, don't. You're dead, I'm alive." Alex screamed. A searing pain at his throat as if being flayed, he jolted awake, finding his body soaked in sweat. Had it all been a nightmare? There was both disbelief and relief in his heart at the escape from what could have been. The next morning, a disturbing discovery awaited Alex, a paper wrap with a glistening scalpel inside. That afternoon, he visited Emily's apartment again only to find the door firmly shut. Mrs. Wilson, the neighbor, told Alex that no one had rented that place since the death of the girl. From that day on, Alex could no longer bear to touch another corpse or stay within the medical college. He had to change careers and became a product sales manager, leaving Mountview Medical College for Springfield. But whether that night's events truly occurred, Alex has yet to find an answer.